the industry was basically the same kind of business model, secular record business, Christian record business. The business model was the same. It's just that we didn't have any money. We had very little money compared to the excess that we had when we were making records for Arista Records in those days, in the early 80s. The budgets were hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you know, we did whatever we needed to do. They supplied us whatever we wanted, you know, some of what we needed, but a lot of what we wanted. And then we started making Christian records, and it was just a fraction of the cost. But one thing I learned is that the guys that made Christian records for years learned how to make great records for a fraction of the money because they had to. We had to make records that sounded expensive, and that's exactly the term we would use. Man, that sounds expensive, you know, even though the record cost us, you know, 30 or 35 grand instead of 400,000 or 500,000. And the secular band I was with was not, you know, this wasn't the Beatles, so it wasn't multi-million-dollar budgets, but it was in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So there was a difference. The thing I noticed is that in America, there is a definite hard line drawn between the secular and the sacred when it comes to music. In Europe, everything was pretty much the same. Music was music. You put it out there, and if it warranted being played on certain radio stations or being, you know, sold in certain stores, they just go to the distributors and get it. But there was definitely hard lines, and for me, honestly, I would love to erase those lines. I always wanted to. Not that we would hide who we were, not at all, but that we would just go in there and just put our music into the mainstream. And listen, if it was very demonstratively about Christ, which honestly it all was, well, people could do what they want with it. If people were interested and wanted to play a song on the radio, or they wanted to go get the record, they would do it. But you know, I would rather leave it up to them to make a judgment call based on actually hearing the music, as opposed to this was in the Christian bin and this is in the secular bin.
Well, don't say suicide. The choice is life or the lie that comes from hell.
I think there's a couple ways to look at that point of mental block or creative block. You know, we hear that a lot with songwriters. Man, I'm just blocked. I've had a period of days or weeks or months and there's nothing there, you know. And sometimes that just happens. So you've got to just kind of, there's two ways to look at it. One way is you can just regularly write and just write something, get it out. Or some of us have the luxury of, because we don't write songs for a living, we can just let it happen when it happens. And if I feel blocked and I'm not under a deadline, well, if I'm blocked, I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to fight it anymore. And when I get unblocked is when the songs will come. Now, for most professional musicians who are still making a living either writing songs, and they've got a quota to deliver 12 or 15 songs a year to a publisher, or you're recording for a label and every, you know, 12, 14, 18 months you've got to have a record ready, you're going to feel writer's block a lot more because you're under the gun. When you can do it whenever you want, as it comes, you're not going to feel the writer's block, because when it's there you don't pay attention to it and you just do something else. When you're trying to make a living as a writer, songwriter, musician, whatever, you've got to kind of stay on target a little more. But you know, it's the same thing as somebody that goes to work, you know, 5 days a week. And some days you get up, you're feeling motivated, you're excited to get there. Other days you're a little tired. Maybe something at work is not, you know, going so great, and you just kind of, you got to push yourself a little bit more. It's the same with a songwriter and with a recording artist. Sometimes you just have to push yourself a little more. I've spent many a year being frustrated, you know, at having to produce and having to have a great new idea, and not only one but a dozen of them, you know, to make a record. There have been times where I have been blocked and I've had a hard time with it. And one of the reasons I started co-writing many years ago is because I realized if I'm blocked, maybe my buddy isn't. So I would immediately start co-writing, and I'd find great writers. And you know, when you write with, you know, 4, 6, 8, 10 people, pretty soon you realize the ones where you've got that real thing with, and you're just in sync with this writer. And those would be the guys that I would call. And sometimes we both get, you know, blocked at the same time. But you just come back the next day and start again.